All right, real men don't pretend. When I was 12 years old, my father told me that real men don't play make-believe. He was wearing a neon visor with some company's logo, plaid shorts, and loafers. He was shirtless, which had been a bad idea for several years. First, skin cancer. Second, saggy nipples. But as his body aged, his self-image stayed the same. In college, my father played basketball. This was in the mid-90s, right about the time people decided that you had to be more than tall and skinny, but also muscular to play college ball. He gained 20 pounds from the weight room his senior year of high school and got a full-ride scholarship to a state university with good money, but a lousy team. He lost the muscle after he quit when Mom got pregnant with Morgan. But that didn't mean Dad needed to put on more clothes 15 years later. So he sat in the yard, topless, pulling weeds out of the ground with the help of a screwdriver. I was using an ice pick, the less useful tool. Though my father swore I was wrong. He showed me how to make tiny holes all the way around the weed. Then, theoretically, it would pull out of the ground without tearing the grass. It never worked. I learned that torn up weeds with some amount of dirt stuck to them make good shrapnel. I took a handful and threw it above my head, screaming about an air raid. Then I ducked and covered. My favorite part was the way the pieces came down at different speeds. The dirt clods would fall quickly, hitting me in the face before I could put my arms over my head to protect myself, while the leaves floated down softly, landing on my back. I stayed huddled against the ground until I was sure every leaf had fallen and there would be no more civilian casualties. I started to work faster so I could get larger and larger piles of ammunition. I held off for as long as possible, but I was impatient and could never gather more than a couple of handfuls before starting another air raid that involved quite a bit of screaming and flailing and death gurgles. "You're making a mess, boy," my father said, standing over me. I was huddled with my forehead against the hot brown grass and my butt in the air. I didn't know how I could be making a mess outside. Dad squatted down and picked up the weeds around me. He scooped up a few, then let them fall through his hands as if I had purposely destroyed one of his prized houseplants. "The roots," he said. "You have to pull up the roots or there's no point." He stood inside and shook his head. His nipples shook in the opposite direction. "Go inside with your mother." As I walked to the front door, I could hear him mumbling about not knowing what to do with me and how they shouldn't let me watch so much TV. Normally, as I passed under the oak tree that stood in the middle of the yard and shaded our kitchen window, I would jump to grab the highest branch I could reach, make some monkey noises, and see how close I could get to our sidewalk and swinging off. But normal was not making my father happy, so I walked to the porch and made sure he couldn't see when I started my secret agent sneak attack. Dad often made comments about the actions and attributes of real men. Real men didn't wear pink. Real men didn't whistle unless they were trying to get someone's attention or calling an animal. Real men didn't sit down to pee. Mom hated that rule. Not only was Dad bad at aiming when he first woke up or drank 2 beers or had a long day at work, I wasn't tall enough at the age of 4 to get much of anything into the toilet. And for a few weeks, Mom couldn't figure out why the bath mat was always wet when neither my sister nor I had bathed in 2 days. The worst, however, was when my sister started to stand. She was 3 years older than me and jealous of the time Dad and I spent in the bathroom, so he could teach me to pee like a man. She only tried once. Mom happened to walk in on her and went ballistic, calling everyone into the bathroom, ordering Dad to tell us that sitting down to pee was perfectly acceptable. He told Morgan 3 times that she had to sit during every one of her visits, but he refused to include me in the discussion. Mo peed in the shower till she was 11 because of this conversation. I was convinced I was being super sneaky and silent as I walked into the house after being banished from pulling weeds. I could hear Mom mopping in the kitchen. She had a very specific grunt she reserved for mopping, though the overwhelming scent of bleach was also a pretty good clue. I crouched behind the counter that separated the kitchen from the dining area. I tried to fit myself in one of the blue square tiles. I was debating on what action to take. Jump to surprise her or grab the mop handle once it was in view. "You're in my way," Mom said before she was around the corner. I came out of my hiding spot. "You're dirty," she said, continuing to work and grunt each time she managed to change the direction of the mop. "Take your clothes off in the garage and go shower. Don't you dare come into my clean kitchen." I continued my secret agent stealth moves all the way to the garage, using Mom's evenly timed grunts to hide the sound of my movement. My parents had weird standards about modesty and clothing. My mother was never seen in less than full-length pajamas with an ankle-length robe on top of it. even in the summer. Even years later during menopause, when we could see her sweating through the terry cloth, she refused to take anything off. My sister and I, however, were expected to shed clothing whenever our parents deemed it necessary, stripping down to our underwear in the garage, taking off any wet clothes in the swimming pool parking lot. My dad didn't even like going to the dressing room when we were shopping in the mall. Just take off your shirt and put this one on. No one will notice. Usually this was said after he made comments about my pant size going up, even though I wasn't any taller. While he hoped these comments would inspire me to lose weight, he did not think they should make me self-conscious about taking my shirt off in public. No one's going to notice if you do it quickly, he would say, holding the shirt open so I could stick my head through as soon as I had my first shirt off. One time he noticed me looking at a girl who was probably old enough to drive, even though I wasn't out of elementary. "She doesn't even know you're standing here," he said. Right as the girl turned and looked our way, he muttered under his breath as we headed for the dressing room. Instead of going straight to the garage to take off my clothes, I went to my sister's room. I wanted to make sure her door was shut before I walked past her room. "Why are you shutting my door?" she asked without looking up from her book. "You always want your door shut," I said, acting like I was doing her a favor. "Yes," she said, "but if you want it shut, you're up to something." She was a freshman in high school and had shifted from being bossy to inquisitive. Morgan was convinced that she was more mature than her peers and chose to express this maturity by imitating our mom. Before she saw herself as an advanced high school student, she showed her maturity by bossing me and her friends around. Though she soon figured out that bossing around friends was a quick way to be the lonely kid reading a book by herself in the school cafeteria. During the spring semester of 9th grade, however, she became inquisitive and started questioning everyone's purpose and motivation. If her friends suggested they meet at the park instead of the coffee shop, she would try to figure out which friend was crushing on which skater boy. With me, she always assumed I was trying to masturbate. "Why do you suddenly need privacy?" she asked. "What are you about to do?" "I'm going to shower." "There's a door on the bathroom. Why does my door need to be shut?" "What are you taking into the bathroom?" "I'm not taking anything. Mom told me to take my clothes off in the garage." "And why are you so concerned about me seeing you in your underwear? Why do you want to see me in my underwear?" Morgan rolled her eyes and started to get off the bed. This meant she was going to stand over me and lecture while pointing her finger. But before she could, Mom yelled down the hall, "What are you doing with those dirty clothes on?" I mumbled sorry under my breath and started to walk towards the garage. "Don't come back this way. You're 6 feet from the bathroom. Just go get in the shower. I'll vacuum the hall again." She sighed and rolled her eyes and disappeared into the house. Morgan was standing in her doorway. She smirked and rolled her eyes before shutting her door. I looked back down the hall once I reached the bathroom. I couldn't see any footprints or dirt, but Mom would vacuum again. She was a little obsessive about the floors. Morgan had a cat for about 6 months. Mom literally vacuumed the floor twice a day until the cat ran away. Years later, Morgan and I learned that Mom took off the cat's collar and convinced a neighbor she was a stray that needed a home. I crossed my arms and pulled my shirt off and did my best Hulk impression. I held it in my hand, breathing heavily, as if I was angry and ready to rage. I was sure to do all of this silently, since my sister would start asking far too many questions if she heard me talking to myself. I was trying to get my lip to curl more, to really show the grimace and anger Hulk felt. Then I started looking at my chest, and then my belly. Nobody would be threatened by me. In the last year, I had grown boobs, though I would get angry if anyone else pointed that out. My nipples didn't lay flat on my chest like when I was younger, but sagged and pointed downward. My belly hung out and covered the button of my shorts. I knew not to look at myself sideways, because seeing the crease of my gut always made me sad. I wasn't a superhero. I stripped out the rest of my clothes without looking in the mirror again and got in the shower. I needed to become a real man, like my dad always talked about. I almost always stood up to pee, except at night because of the death threats made by my mother. I didn't have any clothes that were pink, except for a walkathon shirt we all participated in after Mom found a lump in her breast. That was the only one we did, since she found out the lump was caused by caffeine. I didn't even know how to whistle, but I still wasn't sure what a real man acted like. My father always acted tired. Whenever he got home from work, whenever he got out of bed in the morning, whenever he finished mowing the lawn or changing the oil in the car, he acted tired and collapsed into his recliner. But I didn't think my dad was a real man, at least not in the way he used the term. Morgan said that our dad was obsessed with what it meant to be a man because he felt neutered by the daily routine and family life. I didn't really know what that meant. I don't think Morgan did either. She might have heard a similar diagnosis on Oprah or Dr. Phil. More likely, Mom drank a few too many glasses of wine and started using Morgan as a sounding board and girlfriend. I think my dad used to be a real man. When he was the star basketball player at the state university, when he worked out every day, and when he went to practice and had an easy time with the ladies, as he liked to say. He would brag about the sports commentator, saying he should audition for Baywatch when he was done playing college ball. Because of his reputation, Mom wouldn't even date him at first. They met at a party where Mom purposely spilled beard on him because his arrogance annoyed her. Even though she didn't want to date Dad, they still had sex. This wasn't something they included in their storytelling, but Morgan pointed it out once she was old enough to do the math and figure out that marriage and babies didn't always go in that order. Dad heard from a friend of a friend that Mom was pregnant, and he knew he was the father. This detail is probably what gave the whole sex without dating thing away. But our father always made a big deal about how noble and caring he was, when he could have been a jerk. Mom resisted at first, but figured out Dad was pretty serious when he quit basketball after his junior season in order to get a job and help pay the hospital bills. And it was all downhill from there, Dad always said at the end of the How We Got Together story. The comment was supposed to be funny, a typical male joke about how terrible marriage is, but there was always this little twinge after he said it. Mom also pointed out that our dad was recovering from a knee injury, and the doctors were warning him that he might never play basketball again. Dad disagreed and said that he could play again, but wanted to do the right thing. He would then jump as high as he could to prove to us that his knee was just fine. When I was 4 and 5, I was amazed by how high he could jump and how long his feet were off the ground. Once I was a little older, I realized that his jumps were not impressive. I tried to imagine what a real man would do as I took a shower. All that came to mind was wearing suits and being good with the ladies. Basically James Bond. I knew I couldn't be James Bond since that was still playing pretend. I tried to think about how I could act like a man while at school. I imagined Priscilla coming up and talking to me. I thought she was the hottest girl I had ever seen in real life. She was also choir president, and I was vice president of the boys' choir, so there could be a reason that she would need to talk to me in the hall. I couldn't think of anything she would say, so I had to come up with the best generic response that showed I was a real man. That response? So? It would be a question, but not rude. It was supposed to be laid back and casual. I was convinced that was what James Bond would do if he was the vice president of the junior high boys' choir. Even though I had a strict rule about not talking to myself while in the shower, I decided to give it a try. The first time I said so, it sounded silly. The second time was too mean. The third time seemed like I was being sarcastic. But then I realized I was still pretending, and real men don't play make-believe. I wasn't sure how to fix this problem. I didn't know how I could start acting like a real man if I couldn't try it out alone. The only thing I knew to do was get out of the shower and dry off. At first, I put a towel around my waist and picked up my dirty clothes so I could take them to the laundry room. But then I looked at my saggy nipples and could see my belly hanging over my towel. I didn't know if Morgan's door was still closed or if Dad was inside. Even though his nipples were saggy too, he said it was from muscle loss, which was okay, but mine was from fat, which was embarrassing. I put the clothes back down on the floor, peeked out the door. No one was in the hallway, so I ran to my bedroom. I put on my baggiest clothes, then went and retrieved the dirty ones so I could take them to the laundry room. Mom had her head in the dryer when I walked in. After you vacuum the hallway, I need you to dust the floorboards, she said, her voice echoing inside the metal drum. But I've been helping Dad all morning, and now you're helping me, she said, taking her head out with a tiny ball of lint in her hand. Morgan's not doing anything. She's studying, and when you're in high school, and if you take a school more seriously, and if you take harder classes like she is, then we'll let you study and do homework on the weekends too. Morgan figured out this trick when she was in the 7th grade. If she claimed there was some big test on Monday or some paper to write, Mom and Dad would let her sit in her room all day instead of helping with the yard work or cleaning the house. Then, once the rest of us were done and showered, she would come out of her room and eat dinner and watch TV. I tried the same thing once, but I couldn't sit in the bedroom that long. The first time I came out for a snagged drink of water, Dad said I must not need to study that bad and told me to put on work clothes so I could help him fix the fence. The job entailed me standing behind him while he nailed up posts. I handed him a new post when he finished hammering, a task that could have easily been accomplished by a wall. My dad hated working alone and came up with an excuse to have someone help him, even if it meant standing and watching, silently. Work was always done in silence. I dropped my dirty clothes into the pile Mom indicated with her head and got to the vacuum. The hallway was long but narrow, so the chore only took a couple of minutes to finish. Dusting baseboards, however, was not so easy. Mom had a rag out for me already, so I went in the kitchen and started in the corner. Part of the problem with this chore was finding a comfortable way of doing it. I never knew if I should stay on my feet or bend over or if I should walk around on my knees. Every position was uncomfortable. But the bigger issue was that there was no way of making it fun. There was nothing I could imagine doing, no way to pretend that it was something exciting. So I decided this would be a good time to practice being a real man. I wouldn't pretend, I wouldn't be silly. I would walk around dusting baseboards in the most masculine way possible. After making my way around the kitchen, I understood why my father spent so much time out in the yard. There was no way to feel like a real man while bending over with a rag. Though I didn't think sitting in the yard pulling weeds with a screwdriver was much better. I didn't understand why Mom would want to do this chore either. I couldn't see how cleaning the house made her feel womanly or whatever the female version of manly was. Mom didn't go around talking about what it meant to be a real woman. I definitely didn't feel like an adult while bending over with the rag, waddling around and bumping my head into walls. I finally gave up on trying to dust like a man and laid down on the tile floor. This was the fastest way. I would lay on my back and push myself with my feet as I ran a rag over the floorboards. This was the only way of making the process painless. I'd even seen my mom do it this way. I went down one side of the living room wall that led to the hallway. I went down the hallway, passing Morgan's room, our bathroom, my bedroom, and started coming down the opposite side. I was humming a song that Morgan was playing in her bedroom. It was almost to the end of the hallway when I ran into Dad's foot. "What are you doing?" he asked, hovering over me, only wearing his boxers. He too had been instructed to change in the garage. "Cleaning baseboards," I said, turning over and sitting up. I didn't like him hovering over me like that. I was worried if he moved the wrong way, I would see more than I wanted to. "Why are you sliding around like that?" "It's the easiest way," I said. "I've seen Mom do it." Dad rolled his eyes and got down on one knee. He took the rag from me. "Look, do it like this." He stayed on one knee and bent over to wipe the boards down. He would wipe back and forth 3 or 4 times, then move a few feet and wipe again. "This way you'll actually get them clean." "They are clean," I said, pointing to the other side of the hall. "Do it again," he said, handing me the rag. He tried to push himself off the floor, but stopped. I had bones crack. He cringed and put his hand on his back. He tried to straighten up. This was too painful, so he stopped. I asked if he needed help, but he only glared at me. He finally stood up by putting one hand on his knee and one on the wall. He mumbled something about sitting in the yard too long as he walked away. "Dad's getting old," Morgan said. She scared me a little since I didn't realize she had the door open and was listening to our conversation. I didn't redust the entire house, but I did start cleaning the way Dad showed me, just in case he came back to check. I cleaned the living room and the laundry room, then went and did my bedroom, even though I didn't think Mom would check. Morgan was on her own. My dad had gone to his room and shut the door so he could take a shower. I didn't want to walk in on him naked, but I also wasn't going to stand around for 30 minutes until he decided to come out. My parents always barged into mine and Morgan's room. They never knocked or asked to come in, so it served him right. The shower was on when I went inside. I would have some kind of warning before Dad walked out, so I started to dust as quickly as possible. I was halfway down the first wall when I realized my dad was talking. He wasn't actually in the shower, but standing in front of the vanity. He was on the other side of the wall, so I couldn't see him, but there wasn't a door between the vanity and the bedroom, so I had to be careful he didn't catch me snooping. I sat with my back against the wall as close to the doorway as I felt was safe. I couldn't hear everything he said, but he was definitely talking to himself. He was saying, "I'm going to give it to you," in a vaguely threatening way. Then he would say, "You just wait, you'll see, just wait." He was talking in a weird voice that sounded kind of like his Robert De Niro impression. Dad loved De Niro, and he was always quoting lines from his movies, even though Morgan and I were strictly prohibited from seeing any of his films. As I sat on the floor, Dad kept quoting lines from movies that I had never seen. I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing. Just a few hours earlier, Dad said that real men don't play make-believe. He was looking in the mirror, pretending to be someone else. Just like I did before I took a shower. Suddenly, Dad seemed less like a parent who never understood me, and more like a friend. It was like the time I farted during choir rehearsal, when all the choirs were together. One of the 8th graders put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, dude, we all do it." Then he farted loud enough for the director to hear. That was good timing. I had fallen on my side from laughing so much and trying to not make a sound. I sat up so I could listen more, but Dad wasn't talking. I crouched on my toes so I could hide behind the bed if he walked in the room, but I really hoped you'd quote a few more movie lines first. "I don't think it's going to happen," my dad said in a voice that was not Robert De Niro. It was a voice I had never heard come from him. It was sad and defeated, not the way a real man should talk. "That's okay," I heard my mom say. "Just help me up." Her knees cracked. I had no idea Mom was with him. I really had to cover my mouth and not make noise. I didn't know my dad would quote lines from movies Mom didn't like, or why she would stay silent. Usually she would hit Dad in the shoulder and tell him to stop when he quoted a movie she deemed inappropriate. I realized Mom could come into the room at any moment. I quickly hid behind the bed. I huddled in the corner, making sure I could only be seen if she purposely looked around the room. She told Dad it was okay. She said that she wasn't upset. Then I heard her walking through the bedroom and shutting her door. Dad let out a string of curse words from behind a wall. He hit the counter, and then I heard him shut the door to the bathroom. I was starting to realize what I had heard. Ronnie had told me about hearing the same thing the summer before. He had walked home from a slumber party at a neighbor's house. His parents were in their bed when he walked into their room, so everyone knew what was going on and no one could pretend it didn't happen. What I couldn't figure out in that moment, though, was if this made Dad a real man, or if this was what happened when someone tried to be a real man when they weren't. Either way, it didn't seem like a fun experience. As I sat huddled in the corner thinking about my dad, why my dad was so upset, and what my mom was telling him not to be angry about, I heard her calling me from the other side of the house. I started quickly dusting the baseboards. If I could dust them and walk out of the room before she came out of the hallway, I could pretend I was never in there. I went around the room as fast as I could and made my exit. Mom was standing in the living room and saw me come out. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Cleaning the baseboards?" "How long have you been in there?" I made a face to show how annoyed I was from all the questions. "Why was the door shut?" she asked before I could answer the first question. Was I not supposed to dust behind the door? I had learned from watching Morgan that sarcasm annoyed our mother and usually caused her to walk away. "Have you finished the whole house?" "Everything but Morgan's room." She took the rag from me and said that's fine. She turned around and started to walk away, but stopped and looked at me again. I didn't think my heart could ever beat so fast. I asked if she wanted me to do something else. This was a mistake. She knew I was guilty of something when I offered to do more chores. She said no and walked back to the laundry room. I escaped to my bedroom. I pulled a box of comic books out from under my bed and started to read. This was another thing real men didn't do. They didn't read comics. Mom was just happy that I was reading, so she would take me to the store every Wednesday to buy a few new ones. I would put them in my backpack until I got home, then hide them in the box under my bed. Dad said if Mom could prohibit me from watching De Niro movies, he could ban me from reading comic books. Mom said we would tell Dad about this once I graduated high school. After looking through a couple of comics I had already read, I gave up and just stared at the wall. I always wanted to be a real man. Ever since my father started making comments about what a real man was, I wanted to be those things, even if most of those things did not seem fun. But if what I heard was Dad being a real man, I didn't know if that's what I wanted to be anymore. I didn't want to spend my day pulling weeds and yelling at my penis. There was a light knock on my door. No one ever knocked, so I didn't know how to react and sat in silence. Mom asked if she could come in. I said yes. She walked over where I was sitting and touched my head. She said that dinner was ready and everyone was at the table waiting on me. I apologized and said I hadn't heard them call. "Oh, I didn't," Mom said. "I just decided to come and get you this time." She was being weird, but I wasn't going to say anything. Weirdness was better than talking about what happened. When I got to the dining room, everyone was putting food on their plates. I did the same and we started eating in silence. "Did you see how your son was cleaning the baseboards?" Dad asked Mom. He always referred to me as your son when I did something that annoyed him. He always liked talking about me like I wasn't in the room. Usually Mom joined in, but this time she only shrugged and continued eating. And he kept throwing the weeds around the yard. He couldn't concentrate and just pull them out of the ground like a normal person. "Pulling weeds is a pretty boring job," Mom said. Dad didn't like that Mom wasn't taking his side. He looked at me and frowned. I need to learn how to concentrate. I just nodded, not knowing what else to do and not wanting to argue with him. It doesn't matter if the job is boring. You have to learn how to stick with it and get it done. That's called responsibility. That's what real men do. We sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Mom put down her fork and reached over to mess up my hair. "It's okay," she said. "He's just a boy." I didn't protest that, even in my heart, because at that moment, I wanted nothing more than to be just a boy.
The first poem I would like to read is the one that's the title from the manuscript, Looking for a Publisher. That's not the title, Looking for a Publisher. The title is Black Beard, White Dog, and this is kind of a loose narrative. Heading to work, I walk past your house. You, with your black beard and white dog, are sleeping in the dark. The white cat gazes out the window. My blunt fingertips tell me you dream of tropics and early fall. My fingertips tell me my work is to live and walk while you sleep. You throw a stick into water, and the white dog fetches. You and your tropical dream in your house. The cat on the windowsill will live. That's his job. Give him a broom, a mouse, and give yourself another hour of sleep. Heading to work, I walk past your house. Morning, it's dark. The air chills my senses. My work is to walk slowly past your house with my fingertips, gloved hands, and heart knowledge. You with your black beard and white dog sleep. The dog dreams of the cat. I bear my life into morning, the daylight falling like loose change through fingers that have told me you throw a stick into water, out of which the white dog fetches my life, leading me to you. I kind of sensed like Kenan didn't want the microphone up there. You can't sort of take it off and...
Turn the volume up just a bit, Lee. I think you'll be a little better.
Do
Turn
what?
the volume on.
The volume?
You know how to do that?
No. Just so I don't have to stand so close. Yeah, but I got to just that's okay. Is that okay?
Yeah, we're getting echo because our speakers behind the mic. We really need it over there like we had it last year, but there wasn't a plug there. So.
Oh well, we live in a fallen world. I'll read one that I just got published in a magazine called Isthmus, and this is more along the satirical line, I think. And this is a poem that I've had for, the one I just read is fairly old. And fairly old to me is about 15 or 20 years, and this one is about the same time frame. If I can find it, I don't have the pages numbered. Well, okay, I'm going to, because I can't locate it right away and I don't want people waiting and waiting, I'm going to read one here that's of the elegiac tone. I have options, so this one is called The Translator. Again, this has got to be 10 years old at least, maybe older. Talk after burials, baseball cards, football quarterbacks, touches on anything but the departed. Though maybe some people say to themselves they'll never see him again, except in photographs, home movies, and memory. Not lingering in a hospital where, in the middle of the night, when they were home sleeping, he took a deep breath and his heart stopped forever. In memories, he walks in through a screen door carrying what would he have carried? A fishing pole, a football. He's 19, 10 years before the cancer that would kill him at 29. He greets you and walks briskly into his room. And what did you talk about after he was in the ground? Not the hospital, not the burial on the hillside among other graves, not the tent-shaded mourners, few stepping up to speak of his life, one perplexing the others by saying that when a person dies young, even God must weep. Here, after all that, in your parents' house, you're not talking about his life or death. A black cloth covers a hanging photo of him. On a table are cold cuts, salads, pies. You fix a plate for your daughter. People are coming through the front door and the sun is shining. He knew the word for sun in 5 languages.
Part of it is I'll pick the ones I've got written down here that are easy to find.
How about some satire?
Well, we'll get to it, yeah.
Okay.
Another elegy. Okay, this has a little epigram to it. This poem is called Horses, Booze, and Alimony, and it's about somebody that I knew early on in my life. And the epigraph, Homer Dunn, 1935-1978, sang with the R&B group the Rivieras, whose 45 record Moonlight Serenade rose to number 47 on the hit parade in 1959. That's my preface there. You smoked occasionally, laughed often, and I'm tempted here, miles from your grave, to refuse to do the next chore, take the next breath, or turn the next corner. Oh, to be a worm in the ground, your bones crumbling, you're all voice now. Is there room for your voice, room enough in the coffin, room enough in the house? I should sing you a song, but I can't sing or dance. I can't keep peace with people too well the way you could. Nevertheless, the world turned and bit you. I see you standing before glass doors, that row of stores where you worked mopping floors of a supermarket, where I loitered my teen years and where we met. Your hands touch metal carriages the way a pianist's hands touch keys. I should build a palace for your voice. I should buy an opal pin for your black four in hand. Get out of this completely and let you take over. Something a little shorter here, not an elegy really, but sort of in keeping with the death theme here. This is called Mike's Cousin. Got so good at hunting, he gave up guns, even bows and arrows. He went into the East Texas woods with a knife and stalked and often hit and killed his quarry, rabbits, squirrels, deer. Mike told me this 10 years ago over lunch in a restaurant. Later, the cousin died in his sleep from some allergic reaction. It wasn't cancer or heart disease. He just died one night, quick as a knife kills a rabbit. To continue with something short, there's about 10 sections to this poem, and the poem itself is, well, I've stolen, quote unquote, from a novel by John Hawkes titled Death, Sleep, and the Traveler, so that's the title of my poem. This is section number 6. My mother's uncle, Martin, lived in a white building on a green hill. He'd walk down 2 stairs into his living room. I saw him in the coffin. His widow loved him even after he died. Then she died, then her sister, then my mother, and so on. He had what I wanted, that sunken space to recline in.
That was short.
Well, to change the mood a little bit here, here's the satire. Liz, you had asked about that, so here's my example of satire. Maybe this is called White Wine. I pictured myself a gray-haired 40 vacuuming a rug, a glass of white wine in one hand, in the other a menthol cigarette. I pictured myself old and small with a glass of white wine, climbing Everest, patient and young with a glass of white wine, dining on shark, charbroiled on Bastille Day alone in a booth at Henry's Seafoods. Middle-aged and impulsive with a glass of white wine, spelunking in Carlsbad. Young and curious with white wine, hunting ducks in November. Old and compassionate, convalescing from knee surgery on a porch with white wine, looking out at sage and mesquite, looking up at the big sky, empty of buzzards at 10 a.m., with my glass of white wine in the stands, middle-aged and excited, supporting the Celtics as the buzzer sounds. I wanted to read something with what I think of maybe as a little bit of dramatic flair to it. So I'll do this. Running the time. And I'd had this poem to write in mind for a while, and then I finally wrote it. It's in short sections. And the basis of this is in, I guess, the annals or annals of American crime. When I was a kid, there was a kid who was murdered, and he was about my age, and it was murdered for ransom money, and it was big news. It happened in the Midwest, so the title of the poem is the kid's name, and he had at the end of it. It's in short sections, and at the end. His sister is supposed to be speaking, but she's supposed to be speaking from the grave, because I did a little bit of reading about this situation, and the sister, the one survivor, ended up having I think she died at about 46, a chronic alcoholic or something. Just the burden of all of this stuff, I guess, got to her. But the title of this poem is Bobby Greenpeace. 1, the gas chamber. Full-figured is what they'd call you today, a blousy brunette. Your small dark eyes spoke quiet mirth, a Kansas girl on Missouri's death row. A medium ribeye and strawberry ice cream, your final meal. You put on a black dress and step into eternity. 2, an old story. It came to this: marriage at 14 to a much older man, drugs, prostitution, the usual things. Carl Hall, a sport with a 5 o'clock shadow and a fast money scheme. 3, the courtroom. The white blouse becomes you, Bonnie, 43, 5'2". There's a personality in your slightly kinky hair, in your top-heavy spindle-like frame. In the packed courtroom, you peer up at the judge. The bailiff unlocks cuffs others will wear. 4, the crime. At St. Bonaventure School, the gray blazer and black pillbox reflected in the mirror, you play Bobby's aunt convincingly. Across the desk, Sister Margaret, in her black and white habit, tells her secretary something, and then you tell the boy, "I'm your father's sister. Your mother says I'm to bring you home." It's hard to believe people could get away. I mean, they couldn't get away with something like this in this day and age, but that people could be so depraved. So here's a little more of this. Your compact in the purse on the Packard's floorboard. He sits beside you. A moment ago you said, "This is my husband Carl." No more traffic lights. Tires crunch gravel. Along the road, trees deepen. You're taking him to his family, a boy like the boy I was in 1953. And then the last section, the 5th and last section, called Little Sister, the voice from the grave. An eye for an eye. You don't kill a kid and walk away. He was 7. You can see a picture of me, one parent on each side, in the cemetery. I had a hard life and a relatively short one. After you kidnapped my brother, I wondered who was safe. My brother woke that morning thinking he was going to have a good day. If you're looking for pages in a manuscript, it helps to have the page numbers. I've got a page number for this. This is a narrative, a little bit of a narrative poem, and it's called Church Visit from Two Men in Her Singles Group. And, I put a lot of work into it, I know that, but it's not looking for a publisher. How you manage being there while not being there links to the thought Jesus was both human and God. We were there because Pam was there, a trailer out in the woods, the country, with Brandon, her 6-year-old son. We were there. Andy had come from England to study agriculture in those Ozarks Pam may well have been born in, and her son. She was part of our University Baptist singles group, which was good to me, which embraced me as that September night our feet creaked on 2x4s, her makeshift ramp, and Brandon opened the trailer door. We were, by our visit, embracing her and she us. I don't remember the coffee in my cup getting cold, but saw your face in the family portrait in the thin dark frame on a wall, a 70s picture, your dark hair neither long nor short, your dark mustache. You were a big man, you were there and not there at all. Absence, you did it well, an absence technician. You left after the car wreck, Andy said later that night, that broke Pam's back. About you, she said nothing. Her motorized chair hummed softly. She reached for her merit lights on the end table. Andy, tall, with dark gray hair and balding, bumped his head on the ceiling lamp. Brandon, lying awake in the dark, called to his mother from his side of the wall 28 years ago. He'd be the age I was when I met Andy and Pam. You were there and not there, your picture in the frame, name unspoken, unknown to me. I don't remember our praying, though I'm sure we held hands with our heads bowed. Andy led the prayer. I remember the sound of his voice, his eyes. He earned a PhD and returned to England. I never saw Pam after that night. Where you were then, she didn't know, I thought, years later, not knowing what to expect. We're weak, but we try to be strong. We must be. We visited a crippled mother and her son in a trailer out in the country. I saw you there, your face in the portrait on the wall. I think I'll read 3 more poems. And this one, Ken and I are colleagues at New Mexico Junior College, and my friend Jim Harris is out there, and David Finger is here. He's taught a little bit at NMKC. This poem here was started somewhere in the 1980s, and it got published not too long ago, so persistence pays off. It got revised a lot. But this is called Trot Lines. On a bulletin board, a man in a spacesuit floats in space. 10 years back at a party, he said his wife's mother, age 36, had died in her sleep. I'm not ready to die or to go into space. Go home. I'll do just that when my students' essays have been written. Moments ago, I read them one about trot lines. Maybe tomorrow I'll read about deer hunting or a wreck on a late-night treacherous road. Today I swam a mile and I'm very tired. Also, I'm thirsty. I want to go home. I don't want to attend a lecture or a funeral or shop for groceries or help a boy build a model car. I don't even want to peel dried glue from my fingers. No loud music, no string music in a cafe or espresso in a little cup with glazed violets. I want to revel in my mile of water, knowing this has been a day of small losses. These are probably my most recent things that I've completed, and which one should I read first? I guess I'll read the lighter. I'll read the lighter one first and end with the heavy one. Okay, that's what I'll do. Yeah. With a little footnote to the heavy one, I guess. This is called counseling. Barbara, maybe this was for you. Counseling. I wrote this on my. Some people don't even have cell phones that I know. It's hard to believe, but I've got this and I've got a little app on it. Usually I'll write with a pen and paper, but I wrote this poem on my notepad app, and I wrote it this past summer, and it gave me a lot of satisfaction to do that. If nobody else likes it, at least I found it entertaining, and we'll see. But this is along the satirical line, and it's a satire on online friendships. I'm sure people have online friendships, so it's called Counseling. You were my shrink. You told me I was too hard on myself. I asked what you meant. I drink too much, work and play too hard on not enough sleep. I lie awake at night thinking of death, I said. She's my girlfriend, I said. And because I liked how that sounded, I said, my girlfriend, death. drives a Corvette. Sometimes she wears a death uniform I watch her unbutton and step out of, I said. Not actually, but virtually. Ours is an online thing. You said in person she'll be different. How much better she'll be then when we touch, that is, if she lets me, I said. I sent her a pendant with the letter D. I want to be with her. I want to tuck her in at night and kiss her eyelashes. I liked how that sounded. My girlfriend, Death. Death and I, French kissing in linens at Walmart. That might be nice, you said. Not saying if other clients are in love with Death. This is called Tweakers. No money to pay my phone bill or buy food. I used it to pay the fines and bail of a man who didn't love me. He kicked me in the face, bruised my arms, dislocated my shoulder. But it wasn't all bad. Sometimes it was really good. But he cheated on me with another woman and kicked his dog. He broke into houses and stole things, a laptop, a generator, pool cues, wall caps. This dog defecated on the floor, and I cleaned it up. Texting while driving, "Hey baby, I found the fuses I needed. I'm going to go ahead and wash up while I'm over here. Then I will head back over there. I won't be very long, I promise. Are they going to be leaving anytime soon? Really fucking soon, I hope." He hit a car head on. One morning we got high. At John Deere, my work, I set a table on fire. My God, what have I done? I look in the mirror and pray he loves me. Thank you.